I'm learning a brand new piece now called Regrets. It's one of the Songs Without Words. It's Opus 19, number 2. This is how I learn from the ground up. I do all these little baby steps. What I see in the left hand is a lot of broken intervals. So broken intervals means things like this. Because it actually is going to play out as... The first thing I do actually is study the moving line apart from the interspersed common tones, because I want to hear that line and I'll make sure I'm not going to upstage that line with a lot of the E thumbs in between. So that's what I would do first. I would study that line. I know I'm in A minor, and I know that these harmonies are starting to be alternating between tonic very quickly, tonic dominant, tonic dominant, tonic dominant. You also should know the context or the framing of the harmonies that run through this as well. But we'll start with just the ground bass that's moving apart from the common tones. So we start with an upbeat. As smooth as I can do it. Slide. Now it's also when I see two repeated notes next to each other, you'll notice that the second one, if there are two repeated notes, the second one floats lighter out of the first one, so you don't get vertical kind of repeated notes. You kind of learn to bundle the repeated notes so they flow as a group towards something wherever they're going. That makes sense. I'll just give you a sample of how I do this. Then I might do the actual blocks, because I know the E's are going to be bundled in with the moving line here. So octave here. This I'm going to break. See, the repeated note is lighter. Break it. Then it's just use my wrist. Octave. I'll break this. Less. And here I just have single notes without common tones. And here I have a diminished chord. I might split it. A diminished chord. Things like that. That's how I block that out. And I have single line here. Then I can do this. I have parallel thirds. And then bum. See, this is a combination of independent line and then broken intervals, and this is not broken intervals anymore. But here you would be going, so it's a little bit different, because the right hand will have certain broken intervals that will cross over from the left to the right. But this, this is a kind of learning I do when I first embark upon any pieces, to dissect it this way and not skip these steps. Now the right hand I would do separately, and it starts with this beautiful flowing line that's coming down. It's kind of very sad in A minor, and it starts on Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol. I always use solfege when I play too. I learned the movable do in high school. It means if you modulate in the piece to other than the key of the piece, you move the do to the modulated part. So if I modulate to F major, F becomes the do. Anyway, so we're coming down this beautiful line, and it's an upbeat, the E, and it's in steps coming down. So it's very beautiful. So, and it's MF, but you don't want to slam that first note, but you need a little bit projection of tone, so you can kind of bring it down and still have some tone. More. He has an SF there, and then he has some spike marks. I'm not sure if the to there resolve. Then softly, so I'm already playing it. It's already blocked out for me. Let me do that again. You don't want any bubbles. Ta, therefore. So you have to get that horizontal feeling of those thirds. You see thirds and you see 4 of those consecutive thirds with a slur. You want to make sure you're not doing up, down thirds, but you're going across. What's your destination for me would be this. Therefore, there it is. So you have to have traction through that. Beside having the traction, you want to go, where am I going with that? I'm curving up to the D. And you can also practice this top line. I always tell students, isolate the top line for voicing purposes. So you would do this. Ta, therefore, down. So then you can add it together. You can even do the bottom voice, which would be 2, 3, 1, 2. 2, 3, 1, 2. And together, we yield to the top voice. Ta-dee. You have to have some tone because the left hand is going to be doing its thing. When I blocked that, I went. So the left hand will roll. Therefore, it's hard to get that without that left hand poking out. And again, I tell students, don't box the relationship between the right and left hand. Keep the horizontal motion of the right hand, and the left hand has to move along as well in that direction, because you can get boom ba boom ba boom ba ba, which you don't want. You want to make sure this is just as horizontal as that. You have to keep experimenting with touch. It's very touch sensitive. So these are things I do in this piece. Start unblocking the left hand, and that's something I probably should have done even before I was toying around with the right hand. Probably big jump. You can see that I'm using a lot of my wrist rolls for this, because if you just isolate fingers at the end of this network down here, you're going to get a very tight sound. So you're really playing from your whole arm with these little undulations of your wrist. And what that allows you to do is not to hammer the common tones, because if the wrist goes a little forward for the common tones, it's a shock absorber for those common tones. So that's important. So when you practice, you will there, resolved, very steady. You can see how hard it is to get that voicing. So that's how I practice it. I'm very determined to get all the details. And of course I know the harmonies too. I know what's going on. Mostly a lot of tonic dominant, and some diminished chords are creeping in that part. Let's go to another part, because that's pretty much what I do. Now we have another cadence here in measure, third line, where he does this. This is where you have a division of this broken chord bass, where you start one note in the left and you're rolling like this. So these are things you could also block, because you see that when you go across like this, you can start blocking things like this. And it lends itself to blocking. You can be very fussy too, and you can say, I think I'll voice to the top first, so when I do add the blocks, I'm always bringing out the melodic line. So if you came out of with the right fingering. Da, dee, da, da, dee, da, 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 dee. That's what I tell students to do. Really, find that top line, that rich line in this Mendelssohn piece, which is very, very much geared to that top line with lots of harmony below it. So that when you do add these broken chords that go across, they're just folded in. Da, 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 dee, da, 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 So you gotta be real careful with that voicing. You're leaning toward that for a little bit more arm weight, directing the angle toward the fourth finger. So these are some ideas of how to practice it. I'm just looking for some other places because basically this is the way I would approach it. Lots of broken chord blocks all the way through. There's so many. You can see in the score that it's filled with broken chords in both hands, in fact. But you do have to be aware of you're splitting some of these broken chords and the inside texture of what would be like tenor to alto range. So at the very end, I'm going to do a little blocking and show you what happens at the end. Surprise, C7 to F for a minute. Blocking now here. So you find these little places that are wonderfully dissonant that you want to be real careful with it because it's diminuendo. This is so beautiful. Here's contrary motion. So I look for things like this. And here we have this parallel 6, I believe. Yeah, they're 6, but they're displaced. Yeah, they're 6. It's good to know that. In case you have a memory slip, you have to find those 6. It's a young. 1A. Well, this gives you a little idea of how I approach this piece.